For part one of my teaching subject mastery project, I will be focusing on a developing economy using Brazil as a case study. Introduction. I chose this topic as it is one that I found hard to grasp when I was in school, possibly because I found it hard to relate to Brazil as a place and the processes which led to it being the way it is today. This topic comes under section 4.2 in the senior cycle geography syllabus, a case study of a developing economy outlining the impact of colonialism and adjustments to a global economy. This lesson plan will be aimed at fifth-year students. Students will have touched upon issues of development in the junior cycle, but not to such an extent, so it is important to explain everything concisely and in a logical manner. It is important to note that all students will learn at different speeds and in different ways. Keeping students' attention can also be a problem that I will most likely encounter. The learning outcomes for this topic are as follows: understanding Brazil's history, mastering key concepts, grasping how historical events affected Brazil's economy, and understanding what Brazil's economy is like today. Brief overview of the topic. Once upon a time, Brazil was a colony of Portugal. Brazil supplied cheap raw materials for Portugal such as timber, coffee, cotton, and sugarcane. Brazil became an independent nation in 1822. However, trading links and government policy were still highly influenced by Portugal. This system of neocolonialism continued up until World War II. Brazil struggled with trade during World War II as many ships importing goods to the country were sunk. 1950 to 1963. In the 1950s, Brazil brought in the import substitution policy. This policy aimed to improve the balance of trade by reducing imports and producing goods to supply its own market, creating more jobs and extra revenue for the government. Brazil implemented high tariffs on imports competing with local produce. They also encouraged private investment by creating tax breaks. There was increased spending on health and education, and foreign multinational companies were attracted to the country, such as Sony and Ford. This boosted the economy further. This policy was very successful and resulted in the economy taking off, with many people prospering. 1964 to 1990. From 1964 to 1985, military governments were in power. There seemed to be no coherent policy in place, and nepotism and corruption were rampant. As a result, Brazil soon entered into a period of recession. This led to foreign investment drying up and huge amounts of money being borrowed to try and cover these losses. By 1980, Brazil was bankrupt. The IMF were called in and began restructuring the debt. They lent Brazil money, but in turn Brazil had to cut spending in many sectors such as health, education, and social spending, raise taxes on income, goods, and properties, and increase exports of raw materials. 1991 to today. In 1991, Brazil joined the free trading bloc known as Mercosur. This free trade helped to boost the economy and increase trade between South American countries. Since joining Mercosur, the Brazilian economy has improved, but there are still problems such as national debt, unemployment, and poverty in areas such as the favelas. In 2014, Brazil hosted the World Cup. This led to many protests as so much money was spent on this event rather than on public services and tackling inequality. Similar scenes occurred in Rio de Janeiro when the Olympics were hosted there in 2016. Beginning of the lesson. While every class is different and it is hard to predict how a class will react to an introductory lesson, there are some things I would expect. Some students will be engaged and listening intently. Others may be distracted and talking in between paying attention. Other students may be disinterested in the topic. To try and grasp the attention of all students, I would show them a video after giving a brief introduction. This video would ideally reinforce the points I discussed while also introducing more information. This would help give students a source of information which they may find more captivating. Middle of the lesson. By the middle of the introductory lesson, I would expect the students to have built a foundation where they have a basic understanding of the topic. This would be a good time to work on some critical thinking. A good means of doing so would be to divide the class up into smaller groups and give them a group activity such as a worksheet. These answers could be discussed afterwards as a class. This would allow some students who have better knowledge of the topic to pass on their knowledge to other classmates. It would also allow for students who feel shy talking in front of the class to talk in a more relaxed environment. End of the lesson. To cement the knowledge of the topic into the students' minds, I would summarize everything we have covered and then begin a question and answer section where students can ask me questions as well as me asking them questions. This would help give me an understanding of how students have dealt with the topic and any areas where they need more work on. Some teaching, learning and assessment strategies that would be particularly useful in teaching this topic are as follows. Teaching strategies. Visualization. This can bring concepts to life for students and can help add some excitement to class. Group exercises. When students work together as part of a group, we often see benefits as students with a better knowledge of the topic pass it on to other students. It's also a great space for students to bounce ideas off each other. Learning strategies. Cooperative learning. Working with other students can be a great way for students to learn in different ways. Critical thinking. This can be a very effective way for students to learn. It's also a skill that students can take with them and use for other topics and subjects. Assessment strategies. Quizzes can be an effective way to test comprehension of a topic. A question and answer section. A two-way question and answer session can be an effective way to quiz students and find out what parts of the topic they are still unsure of. Some key skills that will be developed throughout the teaching of this subject are critical thinking, communication skills, and social skills. Some challenges I foresee when teaching this topic are as follows. Keeping students' attention. I feel as though incorporating multimedia and group activities into my lesson plan will ensure that I grasp students' attention. Different learning speeds. I intend on repeating information and trying to ensure everyone builds a good basic understanding of the topic. Group work can also help, as students who have gained a better understanding of the topic can help pass this information on to students who have not grasped the topic as quickly. Overwhelming students. It is important not to overload students with information, especially when teaching a topic with a lot of new information. If I feel as though students are feeling inundated with information, I will slow down the pace of the class to a pace that is more suitable for them. Some cross-curricular links between other subjects could be seen in history when we discuss the history of colonialism in Brazil. Also with economics when we discuss how Brazil became bankrupt and the measures they took to try and repair their economy. To summarize, this lesson plan has given me more confidence in teaching this topic area to a senior psychic class. I hope to give my students more confidence and pass on my knowledge of the topic to my students.